I buried my wife yesterday. Will you marry me today? The words shake the quiet schoolhouse. A grieving rancher, still in black, stands in the doorway, and before him, a young schoolteacher, heavy with child, her future already clouded by whispers. The church bell tolls. Dust swirls in the street. A shotgun leans by the door, but this isn't about bullets. It's about survival. She should have said no. Yet he isn't asking for love. He's fighting to keep his children from being taken away. But when the wedding vows are spoken, the town's gossip turns to outrage. And just as hope flickers in the lamplight, iron boots stomp on the porch, bringing a railroad agent with chains and papers that could tear their new life apart. Can a marriage born of desperation stand, when the land itself is slipping from their hands? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The late autumn sun cast long shadows across Pine Ridge's dusty main street as church bells tolled the evening hour. Their solemn ring echoed off the mountains, each deep note settling like frost in Noel Ward's bones. He stood motionless across from the weathered schoolhouse, his black morning coat stark against the golden light. The coat still smelled of fresh earth from the grave he'd helped dig yesterday. Through the schoolhouse windows, kerosene lamps flickered to life one by one. Miss Anna moved between them, her silhouette graceful as she went about her end-of-day tasks. Noel's hands tightened on his hat brim. His children, safe at the Henderson place for supper, needed more than his clumsy attempts at comfort. They needed a mother's touch. The air grew colder as the sun slipped behind the peaks. Noel squared his shoulders and crossed the street, boots crunching on scattered pine needles. The schoolhouse steps creaked under his weight. He paused at the door, the words of his late wife Catherine heavy in his mind. Don't let them be split up, Noel. Promise me. Inside, chalk dust moted in the lamplit air. Anna stood at the back of the room, reaching up to erase the day's lessons from the slate board. Her dark hair was coming loose from its neat bun, and her simple calico dress showed the gentle swell of her condition. She turned at his entrance, surprise flickering across her features. Mr. Ward. She set down the eraser, dusting her hands on her apron. I'm so very sorry about Catherine. Noel nodded stiffly, turning his hat in his hands. The familiar sense of chalk and wood smoke couldn't mask the emptiness that seemed to follow him now. Much obliged, Miss James. Anna moved to straighten a row of primers on a shelf, her movements careful. The children, are they settling in with their aunt? They're with the Hendersons tonight. Noel's voice came out rougher than he intended. But no, they won't be going to their aunt. Can't let that happen. She paused in her tidying, something in his tone making her turn to face him fully. The lamplight caught the concern in her eyes. Surely their aunt would... I buried my wife yesterday, Noel cut in, the words falling between them like stones. Will you marry me today? Anna's hand flew to her throat. She took a step back, bumping into her desk. Mr. Ward. I know how it sounds. Noel forced himself to meet her startled gaze. But I made a promise to Catherine. She made me swear the children wouldn't be scattered. Their aunt in Kansas City would take Mary, but the boys... He swallowed hard. The charity board's already asking questions. A rancher with 3 young ones and no wife. They'll step in soon enough. But surely there are other solutions. Anna's voice trembled slightly. She gestured to the empty benches around them, as if seeking support from her absent pupils. I don't understand why you would ask this of me, of all people. Noel took a step forward, his shadow long across the plank floor. Because you're kind to them. I've seen how you are with all your students, but especially with mine since Catherine took ill. Because you need a home yourself before your situation becomes... He trailed off, glancing at her middle. Color rose in Anna's cheeks. Her hand drifted protectively over her stomach. So you offer charity, then? No, ma'am. Noel's voice softened. I offer a fair trade. A home and my name for your help with the children. They need a mother's guidance. I need... He faltered, then pressed on. I need someone who can teach them their letters proper, keep house, help them remember their manners. Catherine wanted them raised right. Anna sank slowly into her chair, her face pale in the lamplight. This is overwhelming, Mr. Ward, to make such a decision so suddenly. I know it's sudden. Wish I had more time to offer. Noel shifted his weight, acutely aware of how his work-worn presence dominated the tidy schoolroom. But the charity board meets tomorrow, once they start their proceedings. The children would be separated. Anna's whisper held understanding. She'd seen it happen before. Families torn apart by well-meaning officials who thought orphanages and distant relatives were better than struggling single parents. Yes. Noel's single word carried the weight of his fear. Anna stood slowly, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. The kerosene lamps cast dancing shadows on the walls as she moved to the window. Outside, the mountains were turning purple with dusk. This is not a decision to be made lightly, Mr. Ward. Marriage is sacred before God. I know that, ma'am. And I must consider my own child's future. Her voice was barely audible. Noel nodded, though she wasn't looking at him. You'd have a proper home. My ranch is small, but it's paid for. Good water, decent grazing. Room for your little one to grow alongside mine. Anna turned back to face him, her expression troubled but thoughtful. I need to speak with Reverend Matthews before I can give you an answer. This affects more than just us. Of course. Noel settled his hat back on his head, relief and anxiety warring in his chest. At least she hadn't refused outright. I'll wait outside while you finish up here. Can walk you to the parsonage if you'd allow it. Anna nodded, her fingers worrying at her apron strings. Give me a few minutes to gather my things. Noel stepped out onto the schoolhouse porch, letting the cool mountain air fill his lungs. The church bells had fallen silent, leaving only the whisper of wind in the pines. Behind him, he could hear Anna moving about, closing desk lids and banking the lamps. Each sound seemed to echo with the weight of what he'd asked of her. He leaned against the porch post, eyes fixed on the darkening street. Catherine's face floated in his memory, pale and drawn on her deathbed, but her grip still strong as she made him promise. Find someone kind, she'd whispered, someone who'll love them proper. Inside, the last lamp went dark. The door opened, and Anna stepped out, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. She paused beside him, her face shadowed. I'm ready, Mr. Ward. They descended the steps together, their footsteps falling into an uneasy rhythm as they headed toward the parsonage. The kerosene lamp in Anna's hand cast just enough light to keep them from stumbling in the gathering dark. Neither spoke, each lost in thoughts of what tomorrow might bring. Above them, the first stars pricked through the purple sky, bearing silent witness to 2 lives hovering on the edge of change. Morning frost glazed the church steps as Anna pulled her woolen shawl tighter. The sun, barely risen above the mountains, cast long shadows across Pine Ridge's main street. Her breath clouded in the crisp air while she waited, each heartbeat seeming to echo the words that had haunted her prayers all night. Will you marry me today? The crunch of boots on frozen ground made her turn. Noel Ward approached, his morning coat brushed clean, his face freshly shaven. He touched the brim of his hat in greeting. Miss James? Mr. Ward. They stood in awkward silence until the church door creaked open. Reverend Thompson's gray-bearded face appeared, his expression grave. Come in, both of you. The preacher's office smelled of leather-bound books and wood smoke from the small stove in the corner. Anna settled into one of the straight-backed chairs, conscious of how the morning light through the window seemed to expose every worry on her face. Noel remained standing, hat in hand. Brother Ward. Reverend Thompson settled behind his desk, folding his hands. I understand you've made quite an unusual proposal to Miss James. Yes, sir. Noel's voice was steady. My wife's been laid to rest not 2 days, but I've got 3 young ones who need looking after. Miss James here is a fine teacher, good with children. Seems a sensible arrangement. Through the thin walls, whispers drifted in from the church proper, where early morning visitors gathered for prayer. Anna recognized Mrs. Whitaker's sharp tone. Did you hear? That schoolteacher and Widow Ward's husband? Heat crept up Anna's neck. Her fingers twisted in her lap, working at loose threads in her gloves. Reverend, there's something you should know. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I'm in a delicate condition. My late husband, James. The preacher's bushy eyebrows drew together. More whispers filtered through the walls, making Anna's words stick in her throat. 4 months along, she managed finally. I've tried to be discreet, but soon enough. All the more reason, Noel cut in, his voice firm. No child of hers will be unwanted under my roof. Anna's head snapped up at his words. She found Noel looking at her with unexpected gentleness in his weathered face. Reverend Thompson rose, pacing to the window. This is a serious matter. Marriage isn't to be entered into lightly, especially not— He gestured vaguely at their circumstances. We must pray on this. With respect, Reverend, Noel said, I've got the charity board meeting at 10 o'clock. They're fixing to split up my children if I can't show them a proper home. Even so, Brother Ward. Prayer first. The preacher's tone brooked no argument. He bowed his head, and Anna closed her eyes, though her thoughts were too tumbled for proper worship. The morning sun crept across the floor while Reverend Thompson prayed, his words touching on wisdom, guidance, and the welfare of children. Anna felt tears threatening. This wasn't how she'd imagined marriage. Not this cold morning, these whispers, this desperate arrangement. Yet when she opened her eyes, she found strength in Noel's steady presence. Miss James? The preacher's voice was gentle. What does your heart tell you? Anna smoothed her skirts, choosing her words carefully. I believe, mister. Ward is an honorable man. His offer. She swallowed hard. It would give my child a name, a home. And his children need mothering. Perhaps God's hand is in this, after all. More whispers came through the walls. Someone opened the church door, letting in a blast of cold air and the sound of Mrs. Whitaker's voice. In his morning coat, no less. Noel's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes on the preacher. Will you marry us, Reverend? Reverend Thompson studied them both for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. If you're both certain, then yes. Though I advise you both to remember that marriage is more than mere convenience. It's a sacred bond before God. I understand, sir. Noel's voice was quiet but firm. And you, Miss James? Anna's heart fluttered, but she forced steadiness into her voice. Yes, Reverend. I understand. Very well. The preacher moved to his shelf, taking down his Bible. Stand together, then. Anna rose on shaking legs. Noel stepped closer, and she caught the scent of saddle leather and soap. They faced each other as Reverend Thompson opened his Bible. The ceremony was brief and solemn. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching dust motes in its beam as they spoke their vows. Anna's voice trembled slightly on the words, love, honor, and obey. But Noel's deep, I do, never wavered. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Noel hesitated only a moment before leaning down to brush his lips across hers. It was the barest touch, respectful and careful, but Anna felt the warmth of it spread through her chest. Reverend Thompson signed the marriage certificate with a flourish, then held out the pen. Your signatures, if you please. Anna wrote her name first, the ink slightly smeared where her hand shook. Noel's signature was rough but readable beneath hers. The preacher sanded the wet ink, then rolled the document carefully. "May God bless this union," he said solemnly, handing the certificate to Noel. When they stepped out of the preacher's office, the church wasn't empty, as Anna had hoped. Several women from the prayer circle sat in the pews, their faces a mix of shock and disapproval. Mrs. Whitaker's fan snapped open with a sound like angry wings. But there were friendly faces too. Old Mr. Peterson, who rang the church bells, smiled and touched his hat. Sarah Cooper, whose children Anna taught, gave an encouraging nod. The morning sun hit them full force as they emerged onto the church steps. Anna blinked at the brightness, feeling strangely lightheaded. This was real, then. She was Mrs. Ward now. Noel cleared his throat. "The wagon's just there." He held out his hand. Anna looked at his offered palm, broad and calloused, bearing the marks of honest work. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her gloved hand in his. His fingers closed warm and secure around hers. They walked together down the church steps, past the clustered onlookers. Anna kept her head high, though she could feel the weight of stairs. Noel's grip remained steady, guiding her toward his waiting wagon. The mountain air was sharp with frost, but the sun promised warmth to come. As they reached the wagon, Anna caught the scent of pine and wood smoke on the breeze, the smell of home, though not the one she'd expected to find. The wagon wheels creaked over frozen ruts as Noel guided the horses along the mountain trail. Anna sat beside him, her gloved hands folded in her lap, watching the afternoon shadows stretch across the snow-dusted pines. The silence between them felt as vast as the Colorado sky. From somewhere ahead came the faint sound of children's voices, drifting from the neighbor's cabin where Noel's little ones waited. Anna's heart quickened. She'd taught them in school, of course. 7-year-old Sarah with her father's serious eyes, 5-year-old Thomas who struggled with his letters, and little Mary, just turned 4, who still sucked her thumb during story time. But this was different. Now she would be their mother. "They're good children," Noel said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. His hands were steady on the reins. "Just confused right now. Hurting." Anna nodded, not trusting her voice. Her own grief for James was still fresh, and now she carried another man's name, riding toward a home where another woman's memories lingered. The wagon rounded a bend, and Anna caught her first glimpse of the Ward Ranch. The house stood solid against the darkening sky, its windows glowing with lamplight. A barn loomed to one side, and a corral stretched behind it. Everything spoke of careful work, of a life built by patient hands. Noel pulled the wagon to a stop near the front porch. "I'll fetch the children," he said, helping Anna down. "Make yourself at home." The door creaked as Anna stepped inside. A single lantern burned on the kitchen table, casting shadows across walls papered in faded flowers. Her eyes fell on the table, where plates sat untouched from the day before. The last meal Noel's wife had prepared. Cups still waited to be filled, spoons laid out with careful precision. Anna's throat tightened. Boots scraped on the porch, and the door opened again. Noel entered first, carrying little Mary, who clung to his neck, half asleep. Sarah and Thomas followed, their faces uncertain in the lamplight. "Children," Noel said softly. "Miss James, Mrs. Ward now. She's come to stay with us, like we talked about." Anna knelt slowly, bringing herself to their level. Sarah's dark eyes watched her warily, while Thomas half hid behind his sister. "Hello," Anna said, keeping her voice gentle. "I know this is strange for all of us, but I promise to try my very best to help take care of you." Mary lifted her head from Noel's shoulder, regarding Anna with solemn eyes. "Can you sing?" Mama always sang at bedtime. "I know some hymns," Anna offered. "Would you like to hear one before bed?" Sarah's rigid posture softened slightly. Mama liked Sweet Hour of Prayer. That's one of my favorites, too. Anna smiled, though her heart ached for these children missing their mother. Shall we have some supper first? Then we can sing together. They gathered around the table, Anna's hands trembling slightly as she cleared away yesterday's dishes. She found bread in the kitchen bin and a pot of beans cooling by the stove. Not much of a wedding feast, but hunger made it welcome enough. Noel said grace, his deep voice steady. Lord, thank you for this food and for bringing us together. Help us to be a family. Amen. They ate quietly, the children stealing glances at Anna between bites. She tried to meet their eyes with encouraging smiles, though her own appetite was small. The beans were cold, but she praised their flavor, earning a brief ghost of a smile from Noel. After supper, Anna helped the children prepare for bed. She found clean nightclothes in their dresser drawers, noting how the girls' dresses needed mending. In the narrow bedroom, 3 small beds lined the walls, quilts tucked tight by loving hands. Would you like to hear that hymn now? Anna asked, as she helped Mary with her buttons. The little girl nodded, and Sarah moved closer, Thomas trailing behind. Anna sat on Mary's bed, and the children gathered round as she began to sing softly. Sweet hour of prayer, that calls me from a world of care. Her voice wasn't as fine as some, but it carried true and clear in the quiet room. By the second verse, Sarah had settled beside her, and Thomas's head drooped against his sister's shoulder. Mary's thumb crept to her mouth as her eyes grew heavy. Anna tucked them in one by one, smoothing blankets and whispering good night. At the door, she turned to find Noel watching, his face unreadable in the shadows. They returned to the main room, where the fire had burned low in the hearth. Anna added a log while Noel settled into a worn armchair, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion. You're good with them, he said after a moment. Better than I deserve, considering. Considering what? Anna prompted gently when he fell silent. Noel ran a hand over his face. The talk in town, marrying so quick after Catherine's passing? Some will say I'm dishonoring her memory. His voice roughened. And you, a respectable teacher, tied to a widower with 3 young ones. They'll judge you harsh for that. Let them judge, Anna said, though her voice shook slightly. God knows our hearts, and these children need us both. I'm afraid of failing them, Noel admitted quietly. Catherine always knew what to do. When they were sick or scared or fighting, I can work from sunup to sundown, but that ain't enough for little ones. Anna moved closer to the fire, watching the flames dance. My mother used to say that faith was like a lantern in the dark. It doesn't show the whole path ahead, just enough light for the next step. She looked at Noel. Perhaps that's all we need right now. Faith to take one step at a time. The wind picked up outside, rattling the shutters. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called, long and lonely. But inside, the fire crackled warm, and the sound of children's breathing drifted from the bedroom. Together under one roof for the first time, this new family born of necessity and hope faced the darkness beyond their walls. Dawn's first light crept through the kitchen window as Anna stirred the flapjack batter. Her hands moved with quiet purpose, measuring and mixing by memory while the cast iron skillet heated on the cook stove. The familiar motions steadied her nerves. In the stillness of early morning, she could almost pretend this was her own kitchen, not one where another woman's touch lingered in every cup and drawer. The floorboards creaked behind her. She turned to find Sarah standing in her nightgown, dark eyes wide at the sight of a stranger in their kitchen. Good morning, Anna said softly. Would you like to help me make breakfast? Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Anna pulled a chair to the counter so the girl could reach. Your father tells me you're good at counting. Can you help me count the flapjacks as we make them? Together they worked in the growing light. Sarah's small voice counted each golden disc as Anna flipped them onto the warming plate. Thomas and Mary wandered in, drawn by the sweet smell of cooking. They watched from the doorway until Anna invited them to set the table. Heavy boots on the porch announced Noel's return from the barn. He paused in the doorway, hat in hand, taking in the sight of his children gathered around Anna at the stove. Something shifted in his weathered face. "Smells mighty fine," he said, hanging his hat on its peg. "Papa, I helped count," Sarah announced. "We made 16 flapjacks." "Is that so?" Noel's gentle tone brought a shy smile to his daughter's face. "Best get cleaned up then, so we can enjoy them while they're hot." Anna helped the children wash their hands and faces, then combed Mary's tangled curls while the little girl squirmed. She found clean shirts for Thomas and Sarah, noting mentally which clothes needed mending. The morning routine felt almost natural, as if she'd been caring for these children far longer than a single day. Over breakfast, the children's reserve began to thaw. Mary giggled when Anna made a game of cutting her flapjacks into tiny bites. Thomas asked for seconds, then thirds, his plate sticky with maple syrup. Even Sarah relaxed enough to tell Anna about her favorite hen in the chicken coop. Noel watched it all, speaking little but missing nothing. When the meal was done, he helped clear the dishes, something Anna suspected was new for him, before heading out to check the cattle pens. The morning passed in a blur of domestic tasks. Anna helped the children with their chores, praising their efforts as they collected eggs and fed the chickens. Between tasks, she settled at the kitchen table with Sarah's torn dress and her sewing basket. The familiar rhythm of needle and thread soothed her racing thoughts. The door opened, bringing a gust of cold air. Noel stood there, snow dusting his shoulders. His eyes fell on the mended dress in Anna's lap. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I wanted to." Anna tied off her thread. "The children need warm clothes for winter." Noel nodded, something like gratitude crossing his face. "Speaking of winter, best you know the lay of the land before the snow gets deep. Care to see the rest of the ranch?" They bundled up against the chill, Noel lifting Anna into the wagon with careful hands. The children stayed behind with their lessons and indoor chores, waving from the window as the wagon rolled away. The tour began at the barn, its wide doors creaking in the wind. Inside, the sweet smell of hay mingled with leather and horse. Noel showed her where the tools were kept, which feed bins held what grain, how to work the heavy door latch if ice froze it shut. At the corral, several horses nickered a greeting. "That bay mare might suit you," Noel said, pointing to a gentle-looking horse. "Once the baby comes, you'll need your own mount for getting around." The thought caught in Anna's throat. This man she barely knew, already planning for her child's arrival. She rested a hand on her middle, still flat beneath her heavy coat. They drove on to the creek, where bare willow branches swayed over ice-rimmed waters. The wagon wheels crunched through patches of snow as Noel pointed out landmarks. The spring that never froze, the hollow tree where owls nested, the rise of land that marked his property line. "It's beautiful," Anna said softly, watching sunlight glint off the creek. "Peaceful." Noel was quiet for a long moment. Catherine thought so too at first, but winters are long up here. Lonely. He cleared his throat. Sometimes I still talk to her. When I'm out checking fence lines or such, probably sounds foolish." "No," Anna whispered. "Not foolish at all." She wrapped her arms around herself, remembering. "After James died, I'd set his place at table every night. Couldn't seem to stop, even knowing he'd never come home again. The other teachers were kind, but they didn't understand. No one did, really. And now," Noel's voice was gentle, "now I have this little one to think of." Anna's hand returned to her middle. "But I worry. A child needs more than just a mother's love. They need family, roots, a place to belong." "They'll have that here," Noel said firmly. "Both of you will." The sun was setting when they returned to the house, painting the snow-touched mountains in shades of gold and rose. Inside, Sarah had helped her siblings wash for supper. The table was set with careful precision, if not quite evenly. Anna served up bowls of beans and cornbread, while Noel carved the last of Sunday's roast into thin slices. The children's chatter filled the kitchen as they shared stories from their day. Thomas's discovery of mouse tracks in the barn, Mary's drawing of their family that now included Anna. They had just bowed their heads for grace when a sharp knock rattled the door. The sound echoed through the quiet kitchen like a gunshot. Noel rose, his chair scraping against the floor. When he opened the door, a tall man in a dark coat stood on the porch, his hat pulled low against the evening chill. A leather portfolio was tucked under one arm. "Mr. Ward?" The man's voice was clipped, official. "I'm Theodore Hammond, representing the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad Company. I have some papers here regarding your property that require immediate attention." The warmth of their family supper seemed to drain away, replaced by a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. Anna watched Noel's shoulders stiffen as he stood in the doorway, blocking the railroad man's view of his family gathered around the table. "This is hardly the time," Noel said, his voice low and hard. "I'm afraid this matter won't wait, mister." Ward Hammond held out a sheaf of papers. "The company has certain claims that must be addressed." Sarah pressed close to Anna's side, while Thomas and Mary watched with wide eyes. Anna laid a protective hand on Sarah's shoulder, feeling the girl tremble slightly beneath her touch. The moment hung suspended, like the last rays of sunlight fading from the mountain peaks. Then Noel stepped back, reluctantly opening the door wider. "Children," Anna said softly, rising from her chair, "why don't we say grace in the kitchen while your father talks business?" Theodore Hammond strode into the cabin like he owned it already, his polished boots tracking snow onto the swept floor. The leather portfolio tucked under his arm seemed to pulse with menace as he approached the dinner table. "My apologies for interrupting your evening meal," Hammond said, though his tone held no real regret. He pulled papers from his portfolio, spreading them across the table where cornbread crumbs still dotted the oilcloth. "But this matter requires immediate attention." Noel remained standing, his hands clenched at his sides. "What matter would that be?" "The matter of ownership, Mr. Ward." Hammond's fingers traced a line of text on one of the documents. "According to our records, this parcel of land was legally transferred to the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad Company 3 years ago." "That's impossible." Noel's voice was rough with disbelief. "This land is mine. Has been since I homesteaded it 12 years back." Hammond's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps you should examine this more closely." He slid a document forward, pointing to a signature at the bottom. "This deed transfer was signed by Catherine Ward on April 15th, 1876. The color drained from Noel's face. Anna, who had been hovering near the kitchen with the children, moved closer to see. The signature was faded but clear, a delicate script that must have belonged to Noel's late wife. "There must be some mistake," Noel said hoarsely. "Catherine would never—" "The document appears quite legitimate, Mr. Ward." Hammond's voice was cool, matter-of-fact. "The railroad purchased several parcels in this area during that period, securing right-of-way for the planned extension. Your late wife's signature was properly witnessed and notarized?" Mary began to sniffle, pressing her face against Anna's skirts. Thomas stood rigid, his young face twisted with confusion and fear. Sarah reached for her little sister's hand, trying to be brave, though her lower lip trembled. "I don't care what that paper says." Noel's words came out like gravel. "This is my land, my home. My children were born here. The company sympathizes with your situation." Hammond gathered the documents, tucking them back into his portfolio. "However, the law is quite clear. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. And if I refuse?" Then the sheriff will be forced to remove you." Hammond straightened his coat. "I strongly advise against making this more difficult than necessary. Good evening." The door closed behind him with a final sounding click. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Mary burst into tears, her sobs breaking the terrible silence. Thomas kicked a chair and ran from the room, while Sarah stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Anna gathered Mary into her arms, murmuring soft words of comfort. "Hush now, little one." "It's all right. Come here, Sarah." She opened her other arm, and Sarah pressed against her side, shoulders shaking. Noel hadn't moved from where he stood by the table, staring at nothing. His face was a mask of stone, but Anna could see the guilt and anguish in his eyes. The weight of it seemed to press him down, aging him years in moments. "Children," Anna said gently, "why don't we get ready for bed?" It's been a long day. It took time to settle them. Mary cried herself to sleep, clutching her rag doll. Thomas had to be coaxed from the barn, his anger melting into tears when Anna held him close. Sarah helped with her siblings, but kept glancing at her father, worry etched on her young face. When Anna finally came downstairs, Noel sat slumped at the table, a cold cup of coffee untouched before him. The lamp cast deep shadows across his features. "The children are asleep," she said softly, sitting across from him. "I failed them." His voice was barely a whisper. "Failed Catherine. Should have known something wasn't right, should have protected them better." "You haven't failed anyone," Anna said firmly, "and this isn't over." He looked up, his eyes haunted. "What else can I do? If Catherine really signed that deed, then there must have been a reason." Anna leaned forward, her voice intense. "Or perhaps the signature isn't what it seems. But giving up now would dishonor her memory and everything you've built here." "Built?" Bitterness crept into his tone. "I was so focused on the ranch, working from sunup to sundown. Maybe Catherine felt alone, trapped. Maybe she—" "Stop." Anna reached across the table, covering his clenched fist with her hand. "This isn't helping your children. They need their father strong now, not drowning in doubt." Noel stared at their joined hands. Something shifted in his expression, like ice beginning to crack. "First light tomorrow, ride into town," Anna continued. "Speak with the county clerk. Check the records yourself, I'll come with you." "You're with child," he protested. "The journey is nothing I can't manage." Her chin lifted stubbornly. "These are my children now too, Noel. My home. I won't stand by while someone tries to take it from us." The word us hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning neither was ready to examine too closely. After a long moment, Noel nodded. "First light, then," he agreed quietly. Anna squeezed his hand once before rising. "I'll pack provisions for the trip. Try to get some rest." But hours later she woke to the sound of boots on the porch. Through the window she could see Noel's figure in the starlight, standing at the edge of his land. The mountain wind pulled at his coat as he stared out into the darkness, a solitary sentinel bearing the weight of both love and loss. Behind him, the cabin's warm lamplight spilled across the snow, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. The night pressed close around him, full of shadows and uncertainty, but also alive with the breath of the land he'd worked so long to protect. Anna watched him from the window, her heart aching with a tenderness that surprised her. Tomorrow they would fight. Tonight, she let him stand his vigil alone, knowing some battles must first be fought in the soul before they can be won in the world. Dawn painted the Colorado sky in streaks of pink and gold as Noel hitched the horses to the wagon. His breath frosted in the early morning air, matching the rime that coated every fence post and blade of grass. Anna emerged from the cabin wearing her warmest shawl, a basket of provisions tucked under her arm. The children are ready, she said softly. Sarah's packed their books for school. Noel nodded, checking the harness one final time. The leather creaked in the cold as he adjusted the traces. Mrs. Peterson will fetch them after breakfast. She's promised to keep them till sunset if need be. They loaded the wagon in silence, both aware of small faces pressed against the cabin's frosted window panes. The children had barely slept, worried their father and new stepmother might not return. Anna's heart ached at their fear, but she forced a smile and waved as Noel helped her up onto the wagon seat. The morning air bit sharp as knife blades as they set out. Anna tucked the heavy quilt around both their laps, grateful for its warmth. The wagon wheels crunched through patches of frost, following the rutted trail toward Pine Ridge. Mountains loomed purple-shadowed against the brightening sky, their peaks already touched with early snow. Catherine loved mornings like this, Noel said suddenly, his voice rough. Used to say the air felt clean enough to wash your soul. Anna glanced at him, noting how his hands tightened on the reins. She sounds like she had a poet's heart. That she did. He fell silent again, lost in memory. Maybe that's why she found it so hard out here. Nothing but work and weather and endless space. The wagon jolted over a frozen rut, making them bump shoulders. Anna steadied herself, choosing her words carefully. Loneliness can make even the most beautiful places feel like a prison. Noel's jaw tightened. I should have seen how it was wearing on her. Too busy with the cattle, the fencing, always something needing done. She'd sit at that window for hours sometimes, staring out at nothing. You were building a life for your family, Anna said gently. There's no shame in that. A life she maybe didn't want in the end. His voice was bitter. Why else would she sign away our land? We don't know that she did, Anna reminded him. Not for certain. They rode on as the sun climbed higher, the frost beginning to melt into diamond drops on the buffalo grass. Pine Ridge appeared around mid-morning, its wooden buildings stark against the landscape. The courthouse stood at the far end of Main Street, its weather-beaten columns trying for dignity. Noel helped Anna down from the wagon, his hand lingering briefly on her waist as she found her footing. Together they climbed the courthouse steps, their boots echoing on the wooden boards. Inside, the county clerk's office smelled of dust and old paper. Mr. Jenkins, a thin man with ink-stained fingers, peered at them over wire-rimmed spectacles. Can I help you folks? Need to see the deed records, Noel said, specifically any transfer papers regarding the Ward Ranch property. Jenkins shuffled through several leather-bound volumes, muttering to himself. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight filtering through grimy windows. Anna found herself holding her breath as the clerk's fingers traced down page after page. Here we are. Jenkins adjusted his spectacles. Ward property transferred to Denver and Rio Grande Railroad Company, April 15th, 1876. He squinted at the page. Signed by Catherine Ward, witnessed by... He frowned, leaning closer. What is it? Noel's voice was tense. Well, now that's peculiar. Jenkins tapped the page. The witness signatures are here, but I don't see a proper notary stamp. Every legal transfer requires one, especially for railroad business. Hope flared in Anna's chest. She touched Noel's arm. Without proper notarization. It could invalidate the whole transaction, Jenkins finished. Though I should warn you, the railroad's lawyers aren't likely to give up easily. They've been buying up land all through this territory, building their empire piece by piece. Let them try, Noel said grimly. I've got 3 children who were born on that land. I won't give it up without a fight. They left the courthouse with a certified copy of the deed, the missing notary stamp like a beacon of hope. The sun had climbed high enough to warm the air, melting the last of the morning frost. We should eat something, Anna suggested as they reached the wagon. No sense traveling home hungry. They found a quiet spot just outside town, where a stand of cottonwoods offered shade. Anna spread out bread, cheese, and apples from her basket while Noel tended to the horses. They sat together on a fallen log, the food simple but welcome. After Thomas was born, Noel said slowly, breaking a long silence, Catherine took sick with the winter fever. Took her months to recover. After that, something in her changed, like she'd looked death in the face and seen something that haunted her. Anna nodded, understanding. When James died in that railroad accident, the whispers started almost immediately. Good Christian women crossed the street to avoid me, as if widow's grief might be catching. Then when I realized I was carrying his child, she pressed a hand to her growing belly. The whispers got louder. People can be cruel when they're afraid, Noel said. Afraid of grief, afraid of being reminded how fragile life is. Yes. Anna smiled sadly. But they can also be unexpectedly kind. Like a man offering marriage to a pregnant widow, just to spare her shame. Noel looked at her then, something soft crossing his weathered features. Wasn't just kindness, he said quietly. Before Anna could respond, the distant whistle of a train cut through the air like a knife. They packed up quickly after that, eager to return home before darkness fell. The children burst from the Petersons' cabin as soon as they heard the wagon approaching, running to meet them with anxious faces. Sarah helped Anna down, while Thomas pressed against his father's leg, needing to touch to be sure. "Did you fix it, Pa?" Mary asked, her small face pinched with worry. "Can we stay home?" Noel lifted her into his arms. "We're working on it, little one. But don't you fret. This is our land, and we aim to keep it." That evening, after a simple supper of beans and cornbread, Anna sat with the children by the hearth. The lamp cast warm shadows as she opened her hymnal, her voice clear and sweet in the quiet cabin. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. That saved a wretch like me." The children joined in on the familiar words, their young voices blending with hers. Across the room, Noel worked at his bench, mending a broken harness strap. His hands moved steadily over the leather, but his eyes kept straying to Anna, softening each time she smiled at the children. Outside, the wind whispered through pine needles, and somewhere in the darkness, a whippoorwill called. Inside the cabin's warm circle of lamplight, 4 children and 2 adults who had been strangers just days ago found themselves becoming something new, a family, fragile as a spring seedling but growing stronger with each passing hour. The autumn days slipped by like golden leaves falling from the cottonwoods. Each morning, Anna rose before dawn to kindle the cook stove, her movements growing slower as the child within her made its presence known. The familiar flutter beneath her heart reminded her that life went on, even in times of uncertainty. At the kitchen table, she spread out primer books and slate tablets while Noel's children clustered around her. Sarah, being the eldest at 10, helped her younger siblings form their letters. 6-year-old Thomas struggled with his numbers, while 8-year-old Mary showed a natural gift for reading. "That's right, Thomas," Anna encouraged, steadying his small hand as he traced a wobbly 5. "See how the line curves like a bird's wing?" The boy's face screwed up in concentration. "Like this, Ma?" The word caught her by surprise, warming her heart. It had started with Mary first, then Sarah, and now Thomas too. Testing out the name as if trying on new shoes, watching to see if it fit. Anna squeezed his shoulder gently. "Just like that, dear one." Through the window, she could see Noel working the fence line, his broad shoulders bent to the task. The ranch demanded constant attention, loose boards, straying cattle, endless repairs. Yet somehow they were making it work, day by day, stitch by stitch, piecing together the fabric of family life. After lessons, the children helped stack split logs against the cabin wall. Winter was coming, and they would need every cord. Anna showed them how to sort beans for storing, picking out any damaged ones. Her own mother had taught her these skills long ago, and now she passed them on, adding to the children's education in practical ways. "Why do we need so many beans, Ma?" Mary asked, her fingers busy with sorting. "Because winter is long," Anna explained, "and we must be prepared. Like the ant in Proverbs, gathering food in summer." Sarah nodded seriously. "Pa says being ready is half the battle." The flour barrel needed filling, too. Anna measured carefully, knowing each cup would be precious once snow blocked the roads to town. The pantry slowly filled with preserved goods, jams, dried meat, root vegetables in sand. Every jar represented hope, a promise that they would endure. Sunday dawned clear and cold. The family dressed in their best clothes, though Anna noticed Mary's dress cuffs were fraying. She made a mental note to mend them later. The wagon ride to church was quiet. Everyone lost in their own thoughts. Pine Ridge's white-painted church seemed to glow in the morning light. As they approached, Anna saw heads turn, heard the murmur of voices. She held her head high, though her heart pounded. Noel's hand found hers as they climbed down from the wagon. "Folks sure love to talk," he muttered. "Let them," she whispered back. "We have nothing to be ashamed of." Inside, they found a pew near the back. The whispers followed them like autumn leaves skittering across floorboards. Anna caught fragments. "Married so soon after," and "carrying another man's child." But then Reverend Thompson's voice rang out, clear and strong. "Today's sermon," he announced, "will be on the subject of compassion." His keen eyes swept the congregation. "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." The whispers died away. The Reverend spoke of Christ's mercy, of judging not lest ye be judged, of bearing one another's burdens. His words seemed to settle like a warm blanket over the assembled faithful. "For love," he concluded, "is patient and kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres." Noel stood straight-backed through it all, his arm pressed against Anna's. When the collection plate passed, he put in $2 silver. Money they could ill afford, but a statement of faith nonetheless. After the service, several women approached Anna with tentative smiles. Mrs. Peterson pressed a jar of preserved peaches into her hands. "For the children," she said softly. "Growing bodies need sweet things sometimes." The afternoon light was fading when they heard horses approaching the ranch. Anna looked up from her mending, alarmed at first, but Noel, peering out the window, broke into a rare smile. "Well, I'll be," he said. "Looks like half the men in town." They poured into the yard. Ranchers, shopkeepers, even the blacksmith. Each brought tools or lumber. Mr. Peterson stepped forward as spokesman. "That old barn of yours won't last another winter," he said gruffly. "Thought we might help you raise a new one before the snows come." Noel stood silent for a long moment, pride warring with necessity. Then he nodded. "Much obliged," he said simply. The yard erupted into activity. Men measured and sawed while boys carried boards. The women, led by Mrs. Peterson, set up tables of food. Anna found herself directing traffic between kitchen and yard, making sure everyone had coffee and biscuits. She paused once to watch Noel working alongside men who, just hours before, had whispered behind their hands at church. Now they passed tools back and forth, called out measurements, shared tobacco during breaks. The sound of hammers rang out like bells of redemption. "Your man's well respected," Mrs. Peterson said, appearing at Anna's elbow. "Folk just needed reminding of it." "He's a good man," Anna agreed. "We're trying our best to build something here." "Well, you're not alone anymore." The older woman squeezed her arm. "That's what neighbors are for." As the sun set, the new barn's framework stood outlined against the purple sky. Men gathered their tools, accepting thanks and hot coffee before heading home. Noel stood at the edge of the yard, hammer still in hand, watching them go. Anna came to stand beside him, their shoulders touching. The autumn air had grown crisp, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. Above them, the first stars pricked through the darkening sky like distant lanterns guiding them home. "Reckon we might make it after all," Noel said quietly. Anna slipped her hand into his rough one. "Together," she replied, "with God's help and good neighbors." Inside the cabin, the children were already asleep, worn out from the day's excitement. The lamp cast a gentle glow over their faces, peaceful in slumber. Anna touched each head softly, Sarah's dark braids, Mary's tousled curls, Thomas's cowlick standing straight up. Her family now, every one of them. The new barn rose against the sky, a testament to the strength of community and the power of second chances. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, they had this moment. This gift of neighbors becoming friends, of whispers turning to helping hands, of faith restored through simple acts of kindness. The autumn sun climbed high as hammers rang out across the ranch yard. Men called instructions back and forth, their voices carrying on the crisp air. The new barn's skeleton rose steadily, board by board, beam by beam. Sawdust filled the air like golden snow, catching the light as it drifted down. Anna stirred the enormous pot of stew simmering over the outdoor fire. The rich aroma of beef, potatoes, and herbs mingled with the sharp scent of fresh-cut lumber. She had started the meal at dawn, knowing hungry workers would need sustenance. Mrs. Peterson and several other women helped, chopping vegetables and kneading dough for fresh bread. "Smells mighty fine," Mr. Peterson called out as he passed with an armload of boards. "Nothing better than a hot meal on a working day." The children darted between the wagons parked in the yard, playing an elaborate game of hide and seek. Their laughter rang clear above the sounds of construction. Thomas had appointed himself official water bearer, proudly carrying a tin dipper to the workers. Mary and Sarah helped the younger children of visiting families build a fort from spare kindling, their faces bright with excitement. "Careful now," Noel's voice carried across the yard as men hoisted a heavy beam. "Steady as she goes." His shirt was dark with sweat, his face streaked with dirt, but his movements were sure and strong. The other men followed his lead without question, respect clear in their actions. By late afternoon, the barn stood tall and proud against the deepening sky. The last nail had been driven, the last board secured. Men stepped back, wiping their brows to admire their work. The fresh wood glowed honey gold in the slanting light. "Lord above," Noel breathed, standing beside Anna. "Never thought to see such a sight." "Many hands make light work," Reverend Thompson said, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's God's truth." As dusk settled in, lanterns were lit and hung from poles around the yard. The women set out tables groaning with food. Anna's stew, fresh bread, pies, and preserves brought by neighbors. Children were called in from their play, faces washed and hands cleaned. "Gather round, folks," Reverend Thompson called. "Let us give thanks." They formed a great circle, heads bowed as the preacher blessed the food and the day's work. Then everyone filled their bowls and found places to sit, on wagon beds, upturned buckets, and blankets spread on the ground. The first stars appeared as voices rose in song. Someone had brought a fiddle, and its sweet notes carried across the yard. "Amazing Grace" floated up toward the darkening sky, followed by "Rock of Ages" and other beloved hymns. Even those who rarely attended church joined in, voices blending in the cool evening air. Between songs, stories were shared. Old-timers told tales of early days in the territory, of harsh winters and spring floods. Younger folks spoke of hopes and dreams. Children dozed against their parents' shoulders, tired but content. Anna sat with Mary and Sarah pressed close on either side. Thomas sprawled at her feet. The baby within her stirred, more active than usual with all the excitement. She placed a hand on her growing belly, smiling at the strong movement. "What's it feel like, Ma?" Mary asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "Here," Anna said softly. She took Mary's small hand and placed it where the baby kicked. The girl's eyes grew round with wonder. "I feel it," she exclaimed. "Sarah, Thomas, come quick." Soon all three children had their hands on Anna's belly, giggling each time they felt movement. Their innocent joy drew smiles from nearby adults. "Like a little horse in there," Thomas declared seriously, making everyone laugh. Across the firelight, Anna caught Noel watching them. A smile played at the corners of his mouth, the first real smile she had seen since their hasty wedding. The shadows that had haunted his eyes seemed lighter somehow. As the evening wore on, more prayers were offered, for good harvests, healthy livestock, safe winters, for new beginnings and healing hearts. The words rose like smoke from the fire, carrying hopes toward heaven. "Time we were heading home," Mr. Peterson finally announced, standing with a groan. Others followed suit, gathering children and belongings. "God bless you all," Noel said, shaking hands as folks departed. "Can't thank you enough." Soon the yard grew quiet, wagon wheels creaking away into the darkness. Anna and Noel stood side by side, watching the last lantern disappear down the trail. The new barn loomed behind them, solid and secure. "Never thought to see such kindness again," Noel said quietly. "After Emily passed, well, felt like God's mercy had dried up complete." Anna slipped her hand into his. "Perhaps it was just gathering strength," she suggested. "Like a river after drought." He squeezed her fingers. "Reckon you might be right at that." Inside the cabin, the children were already half asleep. Anna helped them into nightclothes while Noel banked the fire. No one protested bedtime tonight. The day's excitement had worn them out entirely. "Love you, Ma," Sarah mumbled as Anna tucked the quilt around her. "Love you, Pa." "Love you too, little ones," Anna whispered, her heart full to bursting. "Sleep, sweet." The cabin settled into peaceful silence, broken only by soft breathing and the occasional pop from the fireplace. Outside, a gentle wind rustled through the pines. The new barn stood sentinel in the starlight, its solid presence a promise of protection through whatever storms might come. Peace filled the small home like a physical presence, the peace of work well done, of community restored, of family bonds strengthening day by day. Anna felt it settle around them like a blessing, healing old hurts and nurturing new hope. Looking at her sleeping family, she offered up a silent prayer of thanksgiving. For second chances and fresh starts, for neighbors becoming friends, for love that grew in unexpected places, as sturdy and true as a well-built barn. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ranch yard as hoofbeats approached. Anna looked up from where she hung laundry, her heart skipping at the sight of 5 riders coming down the trail. The railroad agent led them, his black coat stark against the autumn colors. Behind him rode 4 hard-faced men, rifles mounted on their saddles. "Thomas," she called quietly to the boy collecting eggs nearby. "Go fetch your pa from the north pasture. Quick now." The child dropped his basket and ran, understanding the urgency in her voice. Mary and Sarah huddled close to Anna's skirts as the men dismounted. "Mrs. Ward," the agent nodded curtly. He pulled a sheaf of papers from his coat. "Where is your husband?" "He will return shortly," Anna replied, one hand resting protectively over her growing belly. The other children pressed closer, sensing her tension. The men strode toward the newly built barn, their boots kicking up dust. 2 of them carried heavy iron chains that clinked ominously with each step. Anna's throat tightened as she watched them inspect the freshly hewn doors. Minutes stretched like hours until Noel's horse appeared at a gallop, Thomas clinging to his father's back. Noel swung down before the horse fully stopped, his face hard as stone. "What's the meaning of this?" he demanded, placing himself between the men and his family. The agent held out the papers. Court order, Mr. Ward. This property is now officially seized by the Western Pacific Railroad Company. His words fell like hammer blows in the quiet yard. Noel snatched the documents, scanning them with growing desperation. The railroad seal stood out in red wax at the bottom, alongside an official court stamp. "This ain't right," he growled. "We built this barn ourselves, with our neighbor's help." The deed transfer was never properly notarized. "The court has ruled otherwise." The agent gestured to his men. "Secure the building." The armed men moved forward with their chains. The metal links scraped against the new wood as they wrapped them around the door handles. Each clank echoed like a gunshot. "You can't do this!" Noel stepped toward them, fists clenched. Two men raised their rifles in warning. "Stand back," one ordered coldly. Anna hurried forward, catching Noel's arm. "Please," she whispered. "The children." He trembled under her touch, rage and helplessness warring in his expression. Behind them, Sarah began to cry softly. The heavy padlock snapped shut with brutal finality. The agent mounted his horse, looking down at them with cold satisfaction. "You have until the end of the month to vacate," he announced. "After that, the sheriff will remove you by force if necessary." Noel stood rigid, watching them ride away. The dust from their horses' hooves settled slowly in the yard, coating the fresh-cut lumber of their new barn with gray. The rest of the day passed in a fog of disbelief. Anna tried to maintain normalcy for the children's sake, but tension filled every corner of the house. Even the little ones were subdued, picking at their food at supper time. The usual blessing before the meal went unsaid. Only the clink of spoons against bowls broke the heavy silence. Noel stared into his stew, as if searching for answers in its depths. "Perhaps," Anna ventured carefully, "we could speak with Reverend Thompson again. Or find a lawyer in the county seat who—" "What's the use?" Noel's voice was hollow. "Emily's signature is on that transfer. Must have signed it when I was away on that cattle drive, 3 years back." He pushed his bowl away. "My own wife, and I never knew. She must have had her reasons," Anna said softly. "Perhaps she felt alone, worried about providing for the children if something happened to you. I failed her." Noel's words cracked with pain. "Left her alone too often, didn't see how desperate she was getting. Now I'm failing these little ones too." He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Losing everything my father built, everything I meant to pass on to Thomas one day." "Pa?" Thomas looked up, bottom lip trembling. But Noel was already striding out the door, letting it slam behind him. The sound made them all jump. Anna helped the children prepare for bed, answering their worried questions as best she could. She read them an extra chapter from the Bible, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Only when the last candle was blown out did she allow her own tears to fall. Through the window, she could see Noel's silhouette in the barnyard. He sat on an upturned bucket, head bowed, staring at the chained doors that mocked all their hopes. The chains gleamed dully in the starlight, as cold as the future they faced. Anna knelt beside her bed, clasping her hands tightly. "Lord," she whispered, "grant us courage for whatever lies ahead. Show us your path through this valley." Her hand moved to her belly, feeling the child within stir. "Help me be strong for them all." The night wind sighed through the pines, carrying no answers. In the barnyard, Noel remained motionless, a broken man facing the ruins of his dreams. The locked barn doors stood like sentinels of despair, their chains a weight heavier than iron alone could explain. Inside the quiet house, Anna continued her vigil of prayer, asking not for miracles but for strength. The children slept uneasily, their small faces troubled even in dreams, and darkness wrapped around them all, deep and complete, as if the very night held its breath, waiting to see what morning would bring. The chains clinked softly in the wind, a mournful sound that echoed across the yard. Each metallic note seemed to mock the joy of the barn raising, the hope they had all shared such a short time ago. The railroad's claim had done more than seize property. It had stolen the fragile peace this pieced-together family had just begun to find. In the darkness, Anna's prayers continued, a quiet thread of faith holding them together when all else threatened to unravel. She prayed for Noel's wounded spirit, for the children's fears, for her unborn child, and for wisdom to help them all weather this storm. The night deepened, stars wheeling overhead, while below, a family's dreams lay shackled in chains, waiting for dawn, and whatever it might bring. Frost glazed the window panes as dawn crept over the ranch. Anna stirred the cookstove fire, her back aching from a restless night. Through the kitchen window she saw Noel already in the yard, saddling his horse. Her heart sank as she watched him strap his bedroll behind the saddle. The children sat quietly at the breakfast table, sensing the tension in the air. Little Sarah pushed her porridge around without eating, while Thomas stared at the door, waiting for his father to come in. When Noel finally entered, his face was set like granite. "I'm riding out," he announced, not meeting their eyes. "Can't stay here and watch everything fall apart." "Pa, where are you going?" Thomas's voice quavered. "Don't rightly know, son." Noel grabbed his coat from its peg. "Just know I can't fight anymore. Railroad's too big, too powerful." Anna stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "You cannot leave," Noel warned. "These children need their father." "What kind of father loses his children's home?" His words were bitter as winter wind. "Better they don't watch me fail them completely." "And what of your promise?" Anna's chin lifted. "To your late wife, to these children, to me?" Noel flinched as if struck. The children watched wide-eyed, breakfast forgotten. "Remember what the county clerk said?" Anna pressed on. "About the deed lacking a proper notary stamp? There might be hope yet if we look closer at those records." "Railroad's lawyers won't care about missing stamps," Noel muttered, but his hand dropped from the door latch. "Then I'll go to the courthouse myself," Anna declared. Her hand rested protectively over her swollen belly. "I'll search every page of those records until I find proof." "In your condition? On these icy roads?" Noel shook his head. "It's too dangerous." "More dangerous than abandoning your family?" The words hung sharp in the morning air. Sarah began to cry softly. Mary hugged her sister close while Thomas stood, his small fists clenched like his father's. Anna moved to the window, watching frost patterns fade as sunrise touched them. "I'm going," she said quietly, "with or without you. These children deserve someone willing to fight for their home." She turned to the little ones. "Thomas, help your sisters pack some food for the journey. Mary, fetch my warm shawl from upstairs." The children scrambled to obey, grateful for purpose amid the tension. Anna walked past Noel to the barn, her skirts swishing against the frozen ground. Despite her brave words, her hands shook as she reached for the wagon harness. "Let me do that." Noel's rough voice startled her. He stood in the barn doorway, his expression conflicted. Without another word, he began harnessing the horses, his movements precise from years of practice. Within the hour, the wagon stood ready. Anna kissed each child goodbye, leaving them in the care of their nearest neighbor. The morning sun did little to warm the air as they set out, breath frosting with each exhale. The road stretched endless before them, rutted and icy. Anna sat straight despite the jolting wagon, one hand steady on the seat rail, the other pressed against her side where the baby kicked restlessly. Noel rode alongside on his horse, scanning the trail ahead for dangerous patches. Hours passed in silence, broken only by creaking wheels and stamping hooves. The sun climbed higher, but brought no warmth. Anna's back ached fiercely, but she refused to complain. When they stopped to rest the horses, Noel wordlessly helped her down from the wagon, his hands gentle despite his stern expression. They shared a cold lunch of biscuits and jerky, neither speaking of the stakes that drove them forward. The courthouse was still hours away when afternoon shadows began lengthening across the trail. "We should turn back," Noel said, watching Anna climb stiffly back into the wagon. "You're not well." "I'm well enough," she replied, gathering the reins, "and I won't turn back until we've searched those records." The sun was setting when they finally reached Pine Ridge. Most shops had already closed, their windows dark against the purple dusk. At the courthouse steps, Anna's heart sank to see the heavy doors shut. But a light still burned in one window. She knocked firmly, again and again, until footsteps approached from within. The county clerk opened the door, surprise crossing his weathered face. "Mrs. Ward? Mr. Ward? What brings you out so late?" "Please," Anna said, "we need to see the deed records again." "All of them." The clerk hesitated, glancing at the darkening sky. "We're closed for the day." "I beg you," Anna's voice caught. "Our children's future depends on what's in those books." Perhaps it was the tremor in her voice, or the sight of her condition after such a long journey. The clerk's expression softened. "Come in then. But we'll need to be quick. My wife expects me home for supper." Inside, lamplight threw long shadows across the desk as the clerk brought out heavy leather-bound volumes. Anna sat carefully, ignoring her aching back as she began to turn pages. "Here," she said after several minutes, pointing to an entry. "The deed transfer the railroad claims." Look closely at the signatures. Noel and the clerk leaned in. The document showed Emily Ward's signature, but where witness marks should have been, only blank spaces remained. "By law," the clerk said slowly, "any transfer of property requires 2 witnesses besides the notary." He adjusted his spectacles. "And, as we noted before, there's no notary stamp either." "What does that mean?" Noel asked, his voice rough with hope. "It means this deed transfer was never legally completed." The clerk straightened, his face grave. "The railroad's claim rests on an invalid document." Anna's eyes filled with tears of relief. Her hands trembled as she traced the empty spaces on the page where witnesses should have signed. "Emily never meant to give away your land," she whispered to Noel. "She couldn't have. Not properly." Noel stared at the records, his expression transforming from disbelief to determination. "Can you make us a copy of this?" he asked the clerk. "Something official-like?" "I'll do better than that." The clerk pulled out fresh paper and his official seal. "I'll write up a formal statement about the deed's invalidity. No court worth its salt can ignore missing witnesses and a lacking notary stamp." As the clerk wrote, Anna felt the baby move within her. She smiled, touching her belly gently. They had found hope, found reason to fight. The journey home would be long and cold, but her heart was warm with victory. The proof they sought had been here all along, waiting in dusty pages for someone determined enough to find it. She looked up at Noel, seeing in his face the same fierce joy that filled her own heart. They would defend their home together, armed with truth against the railroad's false claim. Outside, stars began appearing in the winter sky as the clerk finished his statement. The official seal pressed into warm wax, marking their first real hope since the railroad agent's arrival. Together, they had found a way forward, a chance to keep their family's home secure. The clerk's parting words echoed in Anna's mind as she and Noel stepped out into the frigid night air. Their victory felt precious yet fragile, like the papers now tucked safely in Noel's coat pocket. The courthouse door clicked shut behind them, leaving them alone beneath the star-scattered sky. "Too late to start home tonight," Noel said, his breath clouding in the cold. "Henderson's boarding house is just down the street. Reckon we could get a room there." Anna nodded, grateful not to face the icy trail in darkness. Her back ached from the long wagon ride, and the baby seemed especially active, as if sharing in their triumph. The boarding house windows glowed warm and welcoming. Inside, Mrs. Henderson greeted them with raised eyebrows, but Christian charity, showing them to separate rooms despite their explanation of being newly married. "Proper's proper," she declared, though she did bring them each a bowl of hot stew and fresh bread. They sat together in the parlor to eat, the only guests still awake at this late hour. The lamp cast soft shadows on the wallpaper as they shared their simple meal. For the first time since their hasty wedding, they were truly alone together, away from children's needs and ranch work and watching neighbors. "Thank you," Noel said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "For today. For believing there was hope when I'd given up." Anna set down her spoon, touched by the gruff sincerity in his voice. "I couldn't let you leave," she said softly. "Those children need their father." "Reckon I married you out of desperation," Noel admitted, his weathered hands clasped before him. "Seemed the only way to keep my promise to Emily, to keep the children together." He paused, searching for words. "But now, I see God's hand in it. How you're good with the little ones. How you fight for what's right." The lamp flickered, sending shadows dancing across his face. Anna's heart quickened at his words. "I was so afraid," she whispered, her hand drifting to her belly. "Afraid of being just another burden, a widow with child living on charity." She met his eyes. "But your children, they've given me such welcome, such love. The ranch already feels like home." "It is your home," Noel said firmly. "You and the little one both." He reached across the table, hesitating before covering her hand with his own. "We'll fight this railroad claim together." Anna turned her palm up to clasp his fingers, feeling the calluses earned from years of ranch work. This touch, freely given, meant more than their hurried hand clasp at the wedding. In the quiet parlor, something shifted between them. Respect deepening into trust, arrangement strengthening into partnership. They talked long into the night, sharing memories they'd held close before. Anna spoke of her childhood on an eastern farm, of teaching her first class of frontier children. Noel described building the ranch from empty prairie, of Emily's brave struggle with loneliness, of his fears of failing as both rancher and father. When the lamp burned low, they retired to their separate rooms, but Anna lay awake for a long time, feeling the baby move and thinking of how God could bring blessing from hardship, love from loss. Morning dawned clear and cold. They broke their fast on Mrs. Henderson's eggs and coffee, then hitched the wagon for the journey home. The return trip seemed shorter somehow, warmed by their new understanding. They spoke easily of plans for the children's schooling, spring planting, the coming baby. The sun was still high when they crested the last hill above the ranch. Shouts of welcome rang out as 3 small figures burst from the neighbor's house, running to meet the wagon. "Pa! Ma!" The children's voices carried on the winter air. Noel swung down from his saddle and caught them all in his arms, holding them tight against his chest. "I'm sorry," he murmured into their hair. "I'm so sorry I thought of leaving. I promise I'll never abandon you again." "Never, ever?" little Sarah asked, her face buried in his coat. "Never, ever," Noel assured her. "This is our home, and we're going to fight to keep it." Thomas helped Anna down from the wagon while Mary danced around them, eager to share tales of their time with the neighbors. Inside the ranch house, a fire crackled welcome in the hearth. The children had helped sweep and tidy, proud to show their care for home. That evening, after supper dishes were cleared and the little ones tucked into bed, Anna knelt beside her chair for evening prayers. She was surprised to feel Noel kneel beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "Teach me," he said quietly, "how to pray proper-like. Emily always did the praying for us." Anna's heart swelled with tenderness. She took his rough hand in hers and bowed her head. "Dear Lord," she began, "we thank you for bringing us safely home, for showing us hope when we thought all was lost, for binding us together as family." Noel's fingers tightened on hers as she prayed. When she finished, he remained kneeling, adding his own simple words, "Lord, give us strength for what's coming. Help us stand firm against this railroad claim, and thank you for sending Anna to us." They rose together, standing close in the lamplight. Through the window, stars winked over their threatened land, but fear no longer held them in its grip. They had found strength in each other, in their children's love, in God's guidance. "The town meeting's in 3 days," Noel said. "Railroad agents sure to be there." Anna squared her shoulders. "Then we'll be there too, with proof of our right to this land." She touched the pocket where their precious documents lay. "We'll face them together." Noel nodded, his expression set with renewed purpose. The despair that had haunted him since the agent's first visit was gone, replaced by determination. Together, they would defend their home, their family, their future. Outside, a coyote called across the winter night. Inside, hope burned bright as the hearth fire, warming them all. The morning of the town meeting dawned cold and clear, frost sparkling on every fence post and rooftop in Pine Ridge. Anna stood before their bedroom mirror, smoothing her best dress over her growing belly, while Noel paced behind her, rehearsing his speech. "The documents clearly show," he started for the 3rd time, then shook his head. "Maybe you should speak first." "No," Anna said firmly, turning to face him. "You're the rancher. You need to stand up first." She crossed to him and straightened his tie. "Just speak from your heart." The children watched, wide-eyed, as they loaded into the wagon, wrapped in warm blankets against the morning chill. Word had spread through town about the meeting, and Anna could see other wagons and riders converging on the town hall as they approached. Inside, the hall hummed with tension. Wooden benches scraped across plank floors as townsfolk found seats. The railroad agent stood at the front with 2 officials in dark suits, their expressions stern beneath their bowler hats. Reverend Thompson sat nearby, his Bible open on his lap. Noel gripped the courthouse documents in his hand as they made their way forward. Anna settled the children on a front bench, then took her place beside her husband. She could feel the weight of stares on her back, hear the whispers floating through the crowd. The mayor called the meeting to order with 3 sharp raps of his gavel. "We're here today to address the railroad's claim on the Ward Ranch property," he announced. "Mr. Ward, you've requested to speak first." Noel rose slowly. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the papers. "Neighbors," he began, his voice rough. "This land, this ranch—" He paused, swallowing hard. The papers shook in his grip as he tried to continue. Anna's heart ached watching him struggle. This proud, strong man who could break wild horses and work from dawn to dusk, now standing vulnerable before judgment. Without hesitation, she rose and stepped to his side. "May I speak?" she asked clearly, her voice carrying through the hall. The mayor nodded, and Anna felt strength flow through her. She took the documents from Noel's hands, letting her shoulder brush his in silent support. "I stand before you not just as Noel Ward's wife, but as someone who knows the value of home and family," she began. "These papers tell a simple truth. The deed the railroad claims is invalid." She held up the documents, her finger pointing to the crucial sections. "There is no notary stamp, which the law requires. There are no witness signatures, which the law demands. This deed holds no more legal weight than a child's drawing." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The railroad agent stepped forward, his face flushed. "The railroad purchased this land fair and square." "Did you?" Anna asked, her voice steady. "Then why bypass proper legal channels? Why push a grieving widower off his land?" She turned to face the crowd. "Look at these children. They were born in that ranch house. They helped build that new barn with their own small hands. Should they be cast out because of an improper deed? The hall grew silent as Anna continued. I came to Pine Ridge as a teacher, and you welcomed me. When I lost my husband, you showed Christian charity. Now I ask you to look into your hearts again. She pressed one hand to her belly, feeling her baby move. This community knows the value of neighbors helping neighbors. We saw it at our barn raising, where so many of you gave your time and strength. We felt it in your prayers when Noel lost his wife. That spirit of coming together, that's what makes a town strong, not railroad money. Old Mrs. Peterson stood up from her bench. She's right. My Henry helped build that barn. Those children come to Sunday school every week. It ain't right to turn them out. The Wards are good neighbors, called Tom Miller, the blacksmith. Always first to help when someone's in trouble. I say we stand with them. One by one, townspeople rose, voicing their support. The mayor had to bang his gavel several times to restore order. The railroad agent's face had grown steadily redder. This is irrelevant. We have a deed dash. An invalid deed, Reverend Thompson interrupted, standing. As an official notary myself, I can confirm what Mrs. Ward says. Without proper signatures and stamps, that paper holds no legal authority. The railroad has powerful lawyers, the agent blustered. We'll take this to court. Then do so, Anna replied calmly. But know that you'll be fighting not just the Wards, but this entire community. We'll testify to the truth. We'll stand together. Cheers erupted through the hall. The agent glanced at his companions, who were already edging toward the door. His bluster deflated like a pricked balloon. This isn't over, he muttered, gathering his papers. The railroad doesn't forget such defiance. But his threats were drowned out by the sound of neighbors surrounding the Wards, offering handshakes and hugs. The children bounced excitedly, caught up in the celebration. Noel stood frozen, overwhelmed by the show of support. Then he turned to Anna, his eyes bright with unshed tears. He clasped her hand tightly, everything he couldn't say flowing through that touch. The mayor's gavel rang out one final time. I believe we can consider this matter settled, he declared. The Ward Ranch stays with the Wards. More cheers filled the hall. Mrs. Peterson hugged Anna carefully around her belly. Tom Miller clapped Noel on the shoulder. Reverend Thompson beamed as he closed his Bible. The children tugged at Anna's skirts. Does this mean we get to stay home? Little Sarah asked. Yes, sweetheart, Anna answered, smoothing her hair. This is our home, and no one can take it from us now. The morning sun streamed through the hall's windows, catching the happy tears on many faces. What had begun as a confrontation had transformed into a celebration of community, of neighbors standing together against injustice. Noel finally found his voice. Thank you, he said roughly, addressing the crowd. Thank you all. His arm slipped around Anna's waist, supporting her as she leaned against him, suddenly tired but deeply content. The railroad agent and his men slipped away, their threats forgotten in the wave of joy that filled the hall. The mayor was already organizing an impromptu celebration at the church, while Mrs. Peterson announced she would fetch her famous apple pies. In that moment, standing with Noel's strength beside her and their children's hands in hers, Anna felt the baby kick, as if joining in the celebration. They were safe. They were home. They were family. The wagon wheels crunched over frozen ground as Noel guided the team home from town. Anna sat beside him, her shawl wrapped tight against the chill, while the children chattered excitedly in the back. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the snow-dusted prairie, but their hearts felt lighter than they had in weeks. Ma, can we have a celebration? Little Sarah asked, tugging at Anna's sleeve. Like after the barn raising? I reckon we might, Noel answered before Anna could respond. His voice held a warmth she hadn't heard since before the railroad agent first appeared. Seems fitting to give thanks, doesn't it? As if in answer to Sarah's wish, they spotted several wagons already gathered at the ranch as they crested the final hill. Smoke curled from the chimney, and lamplight glowed in the windows. The children bounced with excitement as they recognized their neighbors' rigs. Mrs. Peterson stood on the porch, waving. The aroma of her famous apple pies wafted through the crisp air. Tom Miller and his sons were stacking fresh firewood by the door, while Reverend Thompson helped other neighbors arrange tables with food and drink. "You didn't think we'd let you celebrate alone, did you?" Mrs. Peterson called out as they pulled up. She hurried down the steps, her arms already reaching for the children. Come in, come in." The cider's warm, and there's plenty for everyone. Inside, the cabin glowed with welcome. Someone had swept the floors and stoked up the fire. Pies and covered dishes crowded the kitchen table, and the smell of mulled cider filled the air. The children immediately ran to join their friends, their laughter echoing off the log walls. Anna blinked back tears at the thoughtfulness of their neighbors. Just weeks ago, many of these same people had watched her and Noel with suspicious eyes. Now they filled her home with warmth and celebration. "Here, Mrs." "Ward, you rest yourself," Mrs. Peterson insisted, guiding Anna to the rocking chair by the hearth. "In your condition, you've done more than enough for one day." The evening flowed with easy fellowship. Neighbors took turns telling stories and sharing memories of times the Wards had helped them through their own troubles. Tom Miller recalled how Noel had worked through 3 nights to help save his cattle during last winter's blizzard. Reverend Thompson spoke of Anna's dedication to the Sunday school children, teaching them their letters even when she was feeling poorly with morning sickness. As the sky darkened outside, more lanterns were lit inside. The children played quietly in the corner with carved wooden toys, their earlier excitement giving way to contentment. Little Matthew, the youngest, crawled into Anna's lap, his eyes heavy with sleep. Noel stood near the fireplace, watching the scene with quiet joy. The flames cast flickering shadows across his face, softening the worry lines that had deepened over the past weeks. Finally, he cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "Folks," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "I want to thank you all. Not just for today, but for standing with us." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But most of all, I need to thank my wife." All eyes turned to Anna as she sat rocking Matthew. Her cheeks flushed at the attention. "When I asked Anna to marry me, it was out of desperation," Noel continued. "I needed help with the children, and she needed protection from gossip. But God had bigger plans than either of us knew." He crossed to stand beside her chair. "Anna, you've brought more than help to this family. You've brought courage and faith and love. When I was ready to give up today, you stood strong. You fought for our home when I couldn't." Anna reached up to grasp his hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I only did what anyone would do for family," she said softly. "God gave me strength when I needed it most. And He blessed me with all of you, the children, this home, this community. How could I not fight for such precious gifts?" Little Sarah wandered over, climbing onto the arm of the rocking chair. "Are you crying happy tears, Ma?" she asked, touching Anna's wet cheek. "The happiest tears, sweetheart," Anna assured her, pulling the girl close with her free arm. Mrs. Peterson dabbed at her own eyes with her apron. "Well now, I think this calls for pie," she declared, breaking the emotional moment. "Who's hungry?" As their neighbors bustled about, serving pie and fresh cider, Noel knelt beside Anna's chair. Matthew still slept in her lap, his small face peaceful. Sarah leaned against her shoulder, playing with Anna's hair. "I never thought I'd find joy again after losing Rebecca," Noel said quietly, meant for Anna's ears alone. "The grief was so heavy I could barely breathe some days. But you," he touched her cheek gently, "you've turned that sorrow to grace. You've given these children back their laughter. You've given me back my hope." Anna leaned into his touch. "God works in mysterious ways," she whispered. "When I lost James, I thought my life was over. I never imagined I'd find such love again." She placed her free hand on her rounded belly, feeling the baby move within. or that I'd be blessed with such a beautiful family. The evening drew to a close as neighbors began gathering their things to leave. The children's eyes grew heavy, and even the most enthusiastic storytellers wound down. Tom Miller and his sons helped bank the fire, while Mrs. Peterson packed away the remaining food. Noel lifted Matthew carefully from Anna's lap. "Time for bed, little man," he murmured, carrying the sleeping boy towards the children's room. Sarah followed, yawning widely. Anna watched them go, her heart full. The firelight caught the gleam of tears in her eyes again as she rocked slowly, one hand resting on her belly. The warmth of the hearth wrapped around her like a blanket, and the solid log walls seemed to pulse with the love that filled them. When Noel returned, he found her humming softly, an old hymn his mother used to sing. He stood in the doorway watching, memorizing the moment. His wife, their home, the peace that settled over everything like fresh snow. "Sorrow to grace," he whispered, echoing his earlier words. "Who would have thought it possible?" Anna smiled up at him through her tears. "With God, all things are possible," she replied softly, "even healing broken hearts." The fire crackled low in the hearth, casting its warm glow against the walls. Outside, stars scattered across the winter sky like diamonds on black velvet. Inside, love had made a home, stronger than any deed, more precious than any gold. The ranch had become more than just land and buildings. It was the foundation for a family built on faith, courage, and the tender mercy of second chances. Sunday morning dawned with golden light streaming through scattered clouds. The church bells of Pine Ridge rang clear and sweet across the valley, calling the faithful to worship. Wagons and riders converged on the white-painted church, its spire reaching toward heaven against the brilliant blue sky. Inside, sunlight filtered through the simple glass windows, casting warm patterns across the wooden pews. The congregation filled the church to overflowing, their Sunday best brightening the austere interior with splashes of color. Hymn books rustled as Reverend Thompson took his place at the front, his weathered Bible open in his hands. Noel and Anna stood before him, their faces glowing with quiet joy. Noel wore his best black coat, freshly brushed, while Anna's blue dress complemented her evident pregnancy. The children clustered close around them, Sarah in her prettiest pinafore, Matthew with his hair slicked down, and Thomas trying his best to stand tall like his father. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Thompson began, his deep voice carrying to the rafters, "we gather today to witness this family's recommitment before God. What began in necessity has blossomed into love, proving that the Lord's ways are higher than our ways, His thoughts higher than our thoughts." Sarah and Matthew each held one of Anna's hands, while Thomas stood proudly beside his father. The morning light caught the tears in Anna's eyes as Noel turned to face her. "Anna," Noel spoke, his voice steady and clear, "I took you as my wife in haste, but today I choose you again with my whole heart. God sent you to heal our broken family, to mother these children, and to show me that love can bloom even in winter's depths." Anna squeezed the children's hands gently. "Noel," she responded, her voice soft but carrying through the hushed church, "I came to you in need of shelter, but found a home instead. These children have become my own, and you have become my strength. I choose you and them, today and always." Reverend Thompson raised his hands in blessing. "Lord God, watch over this family you have joined together. Protect the child Anna carries beneath her heart. Guide these little ones in your ways. Grant Noel and Anna wisdom as they lead this household in faith and love. Where the world saw impossibility, you have written a story of redemption." The congregation joined in a heartfelt "Amen" that seemed to shake the rafters. Outside after the service, sunshine warmed the gathering of well-wishers. Women who had once whispered behind their hands now embraced Anna warmly, offering advice about the baby and promises of help. Men clapped Noel on the shoulder, shaking his hand with genuine respect. Mrs. Peterson pressed a basket of fresh bread into Anna's hands. "For your Sunday dinner, dear," she said with a warm smile. "Though you've proven you can manage just fine on your own." The family climbed into their wagon, the children's laughter rising with the clop of horses' hooves as they headed home. The autumn air carried the scent of pine and approaching winter, but the sun kept them warm as they traveled the familiar road to their ranch. At home, the children scattered into the yard, chasing chickens and each other, while their Sunday clothes collected dust and grass stains. Noel and Anna settled on the porch, watching their antics with contentment. "Yesterday I buried sorrow," Noel whispered, drawing Anna close. "But today I've found grace." Anna leaned her head against his shoulder, one hand resting on her growing belly. The afternoon light gilded the scene in gold. The children playing, the smoke rising straight from the chimney, the fresh split wood stacked neat against the barn wall. As evening approached, lamplight began to glow from the ranch house windows, warm and inviting against the gathering dusk. Inside, the family's voices mingled in laughter and talk, drifting out across the yard. The ranch stood solid and secure, a beacon of hope in the growing darkness, sheltering a family united by choice, sustained by faith, and blessed with the promise of days to come. Thanks for tuning in. These stories remind us that life is more than headlines. It's about heartlines. Subscribe if you want more moments that make you pause, feel, and reflect.